Welcome to Guided Spirit Conversations. I'm your host, Marla Goldberrg. This podcast has been created with you in mind to acquaint you with some of the most incredible metaphysicians and spiritual leaders from around the globe who have helped others change their lives. In this interactive hour, you will be offered insights and techniques to help you make a difference in your life. Don't forget to subscribe to the show in your favorite listening platform. And here we go, on to the show. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Dr. Marla Goldberrg. So, first, before we get into the podcast, I'd like to ask that we all send prayers to those who are lost in the submarine, hoping that they have found them before the oxygen has run out for them. Also, sending prayers to those who have had devastation from tornadoes throughout that. There's a few places in Texas, towns in Texas that have really been devastated. They could use not only our prayers, and they could use our support. So however you can support them, I'm sure they need everything because those towns have been taken down. Okay, well, thank you for taking the time to let me say this. So today's podcast, I'm going to just start by talking to you about, have you ever had a situation where somebody had said something to you or done something to you and you just ruminated about it or felt shame about it, and it just bothered you, not just for that moment, but for days, weeks, possibly years, where you've hung on to this? I know I have. I before I started on my spiritual path, I really was in that victim mentality. And in addition to being the victim mentality, I was also in the vindictive mentality, where, I want to hurt them like they hurt me. I want to feel X like they've done to me. And I never could understand why I couldn't get out of that loop of limiting and negative belief systems, that loop of more and more of those things coming to me. And not only is it the words and the actions, but it's our thinking that keeps us stuck as well. And I was listening to a book that was channeled by a gentleman, and I can't remember the name, but it's about Saint Germain, who is about the violet flame. Downloaded a number of books through this gentleman, and I'm reading the first one. And it talks about, there's a passage in it that talks about how thought is just a thought until we put feeling behind it, before we put emotion behind it. So we'll talk more about that later, but know that our thoughts can be, if we're in a neutral place with no emotions or energies in it, a thought is just a thought, and it can just fly in and out. Somewhat like what happens when you meditate, where all of a sudden a thought will come through your head and you thank the thought for showing itself and say, I'll address this later, and you get on with your breathing and following your meditation and keeping your mind as clear as you possibly can. And for me, before I learned all this, it made my life really challenging. And I know that if my life was challenging based on my situations and experiences, I'm not alone. I'm not saying yours is, but I would bet dollars to donuts. We've all had times in our lives where we have been really crushed, humiliated, shamed by somebody's words or actions. And then our thoughts, the ruminating, meaning the circling of the thoughts around and around and around, well, they only help perpetuate what's going on. So let me talk about this in a little bit of detail. When somebody does something to us, says something to us, We have a choice. We can choose to be hurt by it, take it personally, be embarrassed by it, shamed, humiliated, angry. I mean, I understand hurt. And Eleanor Roosevelt once said and I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have the quote in front of me, where it's about, you know, somebody can do something, but you're the one who allows it in. You choose to allow it in to do whatever destructiveness the individual meant it to be. And she's right. We do. It's a part of choice. So if you follow me, you've heard me talk about choice and how powerful choice is and how many relatively unconscious and conscious choices we as adults make a day, which are over 33,000. And if you have more responsibility, those numbers increase. Or if you go to, I joke about going to the Cheesecake Factory, our choices increase because there's so much to choose from. And then we choose to hang on to those emotions, those hurt emotions, our hurt feelings. And sometimes we repress them. A lot of times we repress them. But most times we don't process them out. And so when you choose to retaliate or say something mean or cruel to somebody, not something, somebody, you could choose not to say that. You could choose to take the high road. And here's the thing, it's like forgiveness. You choosing not to retaliate with a negative word or a stinging comment or digging that knife in and twisting it, the verbal knife. You don't have to do it. You can change the subject. You can end the conversation if it's on the phone. Say you've got to go. If it's in person, oh, I forgot I have an appointment. I have to leave. Maybe you don't want to be that gracious about it, but walk away. It's a choice, right? And these choices help you in your life's trajectory. Choice affects us because we can choose to not live with limiting beliefs or negative beliefs or actions or words. We can, it's a choice is so powerful, and we can make that choice of not diving in for negative chats or overlays. Did I just say overlays? I so apologize. No, I did not mean overlays. So I apologize for that. But we need to process these negative things out, because if you don't process them out, you will be carrying them like an elephant carries trunks and trunks and trunks. No pun intended with the elephant's trunk, the front trunk, other than the ones we carry behind us. And it really brings us to an energetic lag. It brings us to a place of being tired, depressed. We don't love ourselves. When we have an energetic emotion to a thought, which I had mentioned earlier, you then start bringing heavy weight into yourself. And we haven't even talked about the karmic piece of it yet. So how do choices affect us? Well, now I know a number of people who are so hurt and so wounded, and somebody does something, and it could be pretty gnarly what they did, pretty nasty. And I know I've lived through a number of those. And I'm going to share one right now. So my mother had a boyfriend, and I personally always called him out. I saw what he was doing. I was not intimidated by him. I did not allow him to affect me at all. And the only time during the process of her transition where I truly got affected is when he refused to allow me alone time with her, with my mother. I don't know what he thought she was going to tell me, but he would not leave her alone. And it was really hard for me to deal with that. But here's the thing, after her transition, after he screamed down the hall of the hospital, she's just a bag of bones, do what you want with her. We're in earshot, not just of my family and myself, but of the other ill people, the people who are in the hospital who are sick, who might be thinking they were going to transition. And this might have scared them. Who knows? It was very thoughtless, in my opinion. Um, but then came the stealing. How he wouldn't give us the papers to her will and her trust. My brother was in charge of that. How he tried stealing the money from us. He did steal money from us, from her bank accounts that were supposed to go to us. But then he tried to clean out other things. Anyway, it was a very emotional period of time, and it took I think it was like 4 years before we got a chance to get the trust and get it filled, finish with the lawsuit, trust. So, and then we had to have him evicted. Okay, so this went on for a long period of time. So this was able to be layered and repressed and everything like that. After it was all done, my feeling was, I just sort of like said, let it go. This is about him and who he is. And yes, he stole our money. He made us a victim. He ruined the house he lived in. He, there's all these other nefarious things that he did. But here's the thing. I didn't want to hang on to the anger and hurt, and figured that at a point when he transitioned, we might take action. But I'm not going to let it affect my life. Where other members of my family you would talk to them and it would be like, don't bring up that name, don't bring up the situation, because every time, it's brought up, I just want to hurt him. Now, it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to get hurt because nobody's living in the same state. But the point is that by the constant ruminating and anger and not processing out the anger and the hurt and all the emotions that were tied into that, the people that were hanging on to it, it was like they were putting a noose around their neck with a weight. The choice is, you can either do it or not do it. But the thoughts that went along with it, the words that came out, if the thoughts were negative and the words were negative, and you even thought about doing something hostile to another person, well, that comes back to you like a boomerang. That comes back to you with tenfold, actually. And it will keep you from healing. It will keep you from moving on. And it will keep you from your abundance. So it's really, really important that we keep a check on what we think, what we say, and what we do to anybody else, and not just humans. Let's talk about animals, injuring animals. That too will come back to you. And there is there's a karmic link to this. And the karmic link is that what you put out there that's negative, and you know this, you've heard this isn't new. This isn't new conversation, but what you put out comes back to you. And I don't know about anybody else, I can only talk for me, but I've worked so hard on healing my wounds and cleaning up my karmic debt. And not just for this life, but for past lives also. And I know I've had many. And I've been a metaphysician in many, 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 many lifetimes. So I'm going to assume that I've cleaned up things in between. But I still wanted to clean more. Because here's what happens. And I know I'm sort of like jumping around a little, but I will tie it all together, I promise. But the things we learn in our life, the things we can conquer in this life, we take to the other side and then take into our past lives. So I'm digressing. I know I am in this conversation, but please bear with me. So for example, if you're an alcoholic, if you can get control over your alcoholism and become sober and make your amends and do all the things in the 12-step program, moving forward, you will not be an alcoholic when you transition, and you won't be reincarnated as an alcoholic because you've mastered soberness. The same thing with any addiction. So whatever you're going to learn in this lifetime, guess what? You take into your next life. You take into the afterlife, the other side of the veil, but you take it into your incarnations moving forward. And that's how we ascend and go forward with it. I want to sort of like break down by, the book for me that really captures the ways of living to help ourselves move forward in our human lives is The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz Sr. The book is phenomenal, and the chapters talk about be impeccable with your speech. Don't take things personally. Do your best, and don't make assumptions. And in The Fifth Agreement, which is a book on its own, it talks about be skeptical. It's okay to be skeptical, and I'm paraphrasing, of course. It's okay to be skeptical, but learn to listen. Just because you're skeptical doesn't mean your skepticism is correct, because you're going to miss things that people are saying to you. You won't take it in through the listening. But let's go back to the power in words, because I want to break down the thoughts and feelings and how it affects your life. So words have energy to it. And we all know from Dr. Emoto's scientific study, for ice crystals, for plants, same thing for animals, same thing for human. When you talk with love, when you talk with support, when you talk with using words that are flowery and complimentary and supportive, guess what happens? Your energy increases. And love, you stay in a place of love. And love is the ultimate everything in my world. It truly is. But when you use words to cut and hurt and injure, because you're feeling cut, hurt, and injured, well, you bring more of the same. You heard me say this earlier in this podcast, and I'm saying it again because it's powerful. That you need to be aware of what you're saying and what you're saying, how it affects your environment, how it affects the people in your environment. And when I say in your environment, it could be your sphere of influence. It could be the people you live with, your family, your immediate family, your extended family, your friends, work, your work situation, how people work with you, or they don't work with you because they find you to be mean or rude or intense, whatever it might be. And so if you follow me, you've heard me talk about the clear delete. And so when you're thinking or saying or doing something with malice, with misintent, quickly find yourself saying clear delete, clear delete, clear delete. Some people say clear delete, transmute, and let go. There's different ways of saying it, however you want to say it, but the most important part of this message is saying it. I go clear delete 3 times. It's just easy. And what that does, it just stops the energy from going out into the ethers, from going to the intended individual or situation. And it stops the energy from coming back to you, bringing all that negative shit back into your energetic field tenfold. We work really hard. If you're on the spiritual path, we work hard to heal this, and stop it from coming to us. This is a very powerful way to do this. Okay, we have a question. How do you personally cope with negative or limiting beliefs? That's a great question. Well, I do the clear delete. That is, it's easy. It's something you can do. It doesn't need any equipment or tools or anything. It just makes you mindful. And what'll happen is the more you do it, the more you'll become aware of not only your negative thoughts, actions, and words, but make you aware of the triggers. So, example, you're driving, somebody cuts you off. Knee jerk reaction is, oh my God, you blank, blank, you asshole, whatever you want to call it. And yes, I have those moments too. And then I go clear delete, and then I think, oh, I hope that person isn't just being a jerk. I hope that person, if there's an emergency they're trying to get to, that's why they're driving this way. And then I send a bubble, a love bomb, I guess is a good way of calling it, to put around them. And then if I haven't put the sphere of protection around me, I put a 360-degree sphere around myself individually, around my vehicle, and then I fill them both with liquid gold and surround it with roses for protection, and it will protect you. So that's one way of dealing with your negative energies. Your negative belief systems, or limiting belief systems. The other way of doing it is I love this one, releasing what's going on. So if you haven't been able to process it in the immediate moment, go home, get a kid's Nerf bat or a plastic bat. And here's my caveat. You've heard me say this before. This is not to be used on anything living, any animals, any people, any children. This is only supposed to be used on soft surfaces like mattresses, overstuffed chairs. You can take it out and use it on your porch banister, just the way it's intended to be. So what you do is you take this bat, this Nerf bat or plastic child's bat, and you just let loose on your soft surface or banister or whatever it is, and you just start whacking with as much power and might as you can get it. You will feel within 10 or 15 seconds, you will feel the emotion stirring. The trick to this is, now that you've got them stirring, get them out. Keep hitting, keep hitting, keep hitting until your emotions start to come out. And they may come out in screaming. They might come out in crying. They might come out with you taking the soft surfaces and just hitting it with your fists. Another way to deal with it. What's important when you're dealing with negative and limiting beliefs is that you honor that they're there, take responsibility that they're there, and then take action to move them out of your energetic field. So I hope I answered that question for you. Going back to the power of words, you can raise somebody up using words. Even animals, you can raise up by just being sweet and loving and supportive and patient. Or you can be hostile and aggressive. But that doesn't help anything. It doesn't help anyone. And again, I share with you from personal experience, back in the day before I understood and knew about these lessons, about the way of being, and I was more angry and hurt and, just didn't know how to process things out, my life was way different. Today, because I do know how to do it, and I'm more about supporting, lifting, complimenting, finding the good in whatever situation is going on, that is what you really need to, it changes your life, and it changed my life. In addition, being grateful. And what you can do in your gratitude practice is you can also share that you're grateful that you realized that this was wrong, and you can send your apologies. You can send forgiveness to the situation or person that have injured you. So maybe physically, maybe emotionally, maybe mentally, but it all affects us, and it affects our self-love to ourselves. So by forgiving them helps to heal us and helps us not just to forgive another, but to forgive ourselves. Whether it's forgiving ourselves for putting ourselves in that situation, for not knowing any better, forgiving ourselves for letting somebody shame us or blame us or whatever it might be. And forgiving us is the most universal gift of love and healing you can do for yourself. Not easy. It's not always difficult, but it's not always easy. But it can be done, and you can do it. And if don't try to clear everything out at one time. The important thing is when you're doing this, take small digestible bites of forgiveness if that's what needs be. After practice, after doing forgiveness processes for a while, then you will be able to feel better and better and better about yourself, and in increments put those situations and experiences that have brought harm to you, put them in your rearview mirror, put them behind you, and watch them go away, going further and further from affecting you. It's really, really important. Actions. And, actions, injuring another person, whether it's shooting them, beating them, stabbing them, those actions are really, I'm trying to think of how I want to present this to you. But you can turn those around too, because we do have a few seconds before doing it where we can take some deep breaths and think about what the repercussions are going to be on us energetically, karmically, and even in our physical life. So, for example, you injure someone, you can find yourself in jail. You steal from someone, you can find yourself in jail. In court, losing all your money because you have to pay for lawyers. Calling somebody names. At the end of the day, guess what? You don't feel any better by bringing somebody down. Actually, chances are you'll end up feeling worse because you've hurt somebody. And, somebody told me, who was near and dear in my life when I was very young, said to me, people may forgive you, but they're not going to forget what you did to them, what you said to them. And yes, if they remember without feeling, like they don't get re-triggered, then it just becomes a thought or a distant memory. It's when you put that feeling in it, which I mentioned early in the first part of the podcast, when you address your emotions with feeling, that's when you come out of love. And that's when it starts becoming negative and limiting in your beliefs and how it affects you. I'm pretty much a pacifist. I think the only animal I'm able to kill, that's not even an animal, it's an insect. I can't even hurt a fly, literally. But a mosquito is probably one of the very few things that I could squash. And I'm not saying that that's right either, but sometimes it can bring you things such as Lyme disease. I know there are other diseases that come through mosquitoes. So as somebody who is dealing with Lyme markers, I'm not real happy about getting mosquito bites because, they could go into a deer that's carrying Lyme and bring it to you. So I'm a little precautious about that. But I do ask for forgiveness of myself and of the mosquito for what I've done, because of the fact that I do want to clear up my karma. I know better now. So I don't want to take this stuff with me when it's my time to transition, when it's time to reincarnate. And I definitely don't want to come back as one of those mosquitoes that gets smashed, because that's another conversation. but it's what can happen. So let's talk about thoughts, which I've brought in a number of times. Thoughts are very powerful. Thoughts are as powerful as word or actions. And if you think, like, oh, I wish that person would die, or I wish that person would X, Y, and Z, guess what? That has an energetic effect on you. And it is showing you your lack of self love, and it is showing you your negative and limiting belief systems. So, again, I use the clear delete. Again, when I humanly say something negative, do something that's not the most supportive, or think something negative, I go into that clear delete mode. And as I shared many times through other podcasts, when I first started doing clear delete, it was like a mantra for me, because that's how deep in the weeds I was. There was a mantra. I would think something or say something, and I'd go clear delete, do my 3 times, and then the next thought, the next word, the next action needed to be cleared and deleted again, and then again. And then what I found, it was an exercise that would happen all day long, but what I found is the more I did that, as I mentioned earlier, the more aware I became of my thoughts and projections, and the less I had to do it. So it really does, when you become more mindful, when you become more aware, guess what? It's a gift you give yourself, because you have less energy that you have to put into clearing and deleting what you've done. Then, as I've mentioned, let's talk about the karmic piece of this. Now, when you say things that are loving and supportive, and you're helpful and you're of service, your karma is positive karma. Good things happen, and it will offset negative karma. It's when you do the negative, then you don't clear it and you don't process it out. You will take that, and it will affect your ability to manifest whatever it is that you're trying to manifest in your life. A loving relationship, happy children, a life that makes you joyful and happy. So you control that. That is your control. It's in your control. You do control it. So please be mindful and careful with it, and realize that everything will have, an effect. It's the cause and effect. So you have to decide, and this goes back into choosing, what cause and effect you want to make in this world, what cause and effect you want to make with your imprints on your family, on your children, your husband, your girlfriend, your wife, your boyfriend, whatever it might be. It's really important to think about that, and to understand that you have the ability to shift before it happens. Shift your ways, shift your thoughts. Okay. So as I mentioned, when you're living it with negative and limiting belief systems, when you don't process out your thoughts, you don't process out your hurts, your anger, your shame, whatever it might be. First of all, when you don't do that, you can't manifest. This is the whole key to manifest. It has to do with love. It has to do with clearing out and healing those wounds, removing the negative and limiting belief systems, and working towards it. When you start doing that, and I'm going to add one more thing, adding a gratitude practice into whatever it is you're doing will help for you to start releasing, bringing down those walls, bringing down those blocks, bringing down those barriers that keep you from having what it is you need, want, and desire. And additionally, with a gratitude practice, well, you've heard this said as well. When you are grateful for something, guess what Spirit brings you? More of what you're grateful for. If you're angry and you're sputtering and da 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 and talking about how much you hate this and you don't want this and you don't like that, well, if you don't process it and clear it, what'll happen? Spirit will bring you more of that as well. So, don't you think that it is in your highest and best good to do the processing, do the work, so that and do the gratitude practice, so that you can have what you are divinely meant to have in your life? I had a little teaser on my announcement today, and the teaser stated that um, when you, oh my goodness gracious, it just went out of my brain. I'm having one of those moments. I'll come back to this because I know about this. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I'm coming back to it now. So, we're spiritual beings brought on this earth to have a human experience or human experiences. And when we were here with where we agree upon, we have a soul plan. We agree upon the things that are happening to us. We agree, we choose our parents, we choose our families. We're given options. We make the choice of what we want to do for what we want to experience so that we could either clean it up and clear it or get stuck in it. We're not meant to get stuck in it. The whole purpose of all these challenges and things that come into our lives is not for us to get stuck like quicksand into them, but it's for us to heal and work through so that we can then move forward and get closer and closer and closer to the life we divinely are meant to live, the life we want. I used to daydream of what I wanted in my life. Some call that visualization. But I used to daydream. The problem is, until I worked on me and took care of my stuff, I couldn't manifest it. But once I started healing, guess what? I started manifesting the positive stuff that I want in life. And you can do this as well. So, think about this for a moment about, some of us are born in with lack, right? Well, we all have lack at some point or another, and it's how we process that lack to make it abundant. And if you look at things in lack and you make it like people, and I've said this in the past too, when you hear people go, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke. I have no money, I have no money, I have no money. Well, you're not going to get any money because, again, you're telling spirit you're broke and you're okay being broke. But if you just put at the end of that is, right now money's tight, but it's only temporary, that doesn't bring the permanence into it. It makes it temporary. It makes spirit know that, okay, things are going to change. I want things to change. You want things to change. And spirit will then take notice of it. And then when you talk about the things you do want, even if it's help to get what you want, help to work through your pains, your hurts, your shames, your blames, they will start to conspire on your behalf, and you will start finding things shifting for your highest and best good. I have a question. How can we intentionally create positive karma? I think I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about saying nice words, complimenting people, lifting yourself up, lifting them up. Talk to yourself nicely. Think to yourself nicely. Not, oh, I'm a dummy. Oh, I can't do this. No, I'm unable to. Oh, I'm scared. Now get through that. When you get through that and you say, I can do it. I am going to get through my veil of fear because I know on the other side, what's happening for me is better, is going to be icing on the cake. And I like my icing. So you then continue to do more and more of the same. And that brings better karma to yourself. It teaches you to manifest. Helping people. If you see somebody struggling, let's say they've got too many bags or they've tripped and fallen, help them up. Help them with their bags. Help them any way you can. That helps to bring positive karma to you. and again, offsetting the negative. So I touched upon the 4 agreements. So I'm going to remind you of what they are. It's being impeccable with your words. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. And always do your best. So we spoke about the words, right? We talked about being impeccable with your words. And if you say something that is not impeccable, clear delete. Or I'm sorry, please forgive me. That's another way you can break the energy. But let's talk about how not to take things personally. So we all have people in our lives that can just be mean as snakes, and they say things to you that are hurtful. They want to hurt you because they're hurting. And that's the only way they know how to deal with their pain, was to make somebody else hurt too. Well, when you're not hurt, when you don't take it in, when you don't take it personally, what happens? It's like you've got your shield of armor deflecting what they're doing, and it goes back to them. But what's even more important about that is knowing that when people do that, it's not about you, even though they try to make it about you. They keep showing to themselves and others just how they feel about themselves. It's about them, not about you. So when somebody is being mean, being rude, being offensive, that's just a reflection of who they are. And they're showing it to the world, and they don't realize it. And they're also showing their lack of self-love and all their hurts and wounds. They're like vomiting it out into the world. I need to take a pause here because it's charity shout out time. And yes, even when I do a solo podcast, I do charity shout out. Today, my charity is Animal Welfare Institute. This organization was created in 1951, and it has been alleviating suffering that has been inflicted on animals by humans. So that has to do with they work on abolishing factory farms to support high welfare family farms to achieve human slaughter. And remember that if it's not human slaughter, their fear is in their cells. So we end up ingesting their fear. We don't need to do that or want to do that. Their mission is to improve housing and handling of animals and research, encouraging development and implementation of alternatives to experimentation on live animals. I'm not an advocate of using animals for scientific experiments. Using steel jaw leg hold traps and reform other brutal methods of capturing and killing wildlife, or like animals, like elephants, where they shackle them in place when they're babies and they can only move maybe 6 feet. They're stuck in a 6-foot circle. It's inhumane, and then it gets to the place where you can unshackle them and they're not going to move because they keep feeling the shackle on them. Preserving species from extinction. And there's so much more. It makes my heart break, but I am so grateful for a group like the Animal Welfare Institute and what they do. And they need help. They need support. The majority of charities, and by the way, this charity got 99 out of 100 ranking for how they use their funds, which is very impressive to me. For they use their funds on their mission more so than on their administrative costs and lining the pockets of their board. So please check out the Animal Welfare Institute and help them. And it's not just for domesticated animals, wild animals. We are losing so many animals. So many have already gone into extinction. Let's save them because we need them for our ecosystem. Okay. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you about this charity today for the charity shout out. I'm so grateful. So, we were talking about not taking anything personally. Well, along with that is let's not assume we know what somebody is thinking or doing. Let's not project that out there. Making assumptions, they say if you assume, it makes an ass of you and me. And it does, because I would bet dollars to donuts the majority of times you assume, you're wrong. And then, yes, then it brings more shame, um, more humiliation, and embarrassment, which is the same thing as humiliation, to you. And then again, the wheel starts spinning. So the less we assume and the less we're patiently waiting for things to unfold and show themselves to us, the better it is for our lives. We don't have to worry about somebody else's life, but we do need to learn about our life. And then always do your best. Well, it's important to do our best. Sometimes our best might be 50% of the day before, but considering how we're feeling, it's the best we could do. If we can rise up to doing 110% every single time, it is every single time. Well, how great for us. Not only that, how great for the outcome of whatever it is we're investing our best in. It's always important to do that and not to slack and not to let, throw it on somebody else to do. Now, we're humans, right? We don't always feel 100% every single day, but you make up for it. And not only do you do the best you can in the moment, but you can also be of service of knowing that somebody else is not feeling 100% and you can help them out too. That answers the question about intentional positive karma. It raises your quotient up about doing your best and being of service. And when you're of service, it just opens not only your heart, but somebody else's heart. And then we've got, this is the fifth agreement, which is it's about being skeptical, but listen with open ears. Well, it's okay to be skeptical, and because it's protective. So skeptical in a healthy way, says, okay, I'm not quite sure about this, but I'm going to listen and hear them out. Or if you're going to watch it, I'm going to continue watch this and see, and then I'll make my decisions, make my opinions based on that. If you're skeptical but your mind is closed, well, it's like a parachute, right? It doesn't open unless it doesn't work unless it's open. I certainly put my foot in that one. Parachutes don't work unless they're open. The same thing with your mind. Things don't work if you're not open. In my practice, if somebody comes to me and they are closed-minded, I will send them with love on their way. I will say to them, if you're not open to what could potentially be, what could potentially happen and shift for you, then nothing I do, I'll do my job, but it won't work for you. And it won't work because you're closed-minded. So it's really important as humans to listen. And maybe wherever we have our skepticism and doubt can be opened for us. Back in 2015, I was having a conversation with a friend's brother. And he was very, very for the person who was running in the particular race on that particular side. Now, I don't talk about politics very often, but I will tell you, I'm independent. I don't go Democrat, I don't go Republican, I go for the best person who is going to do the best job for their constituency. And we were having that conversation. And he kept saying to me, well, this person is better and this person, and this is who I'm for. And I said, but explain why. Not why, because I needed him to jump through hoops for me, but what I was hoping for, I wanted to keep my ears open. I wanted to listen to see if something this person saw or heard or researched that I wasn't aware of, because I wasn't so dug into my place that I couldn't be open to hearing the why of this individual. And that's my take, my rap on, being skeptical, but listening with open ears, because you might miss something. Maybe you heard something and maybe that person redeemed themselves. Maybe there's a rumor that isn't even true, but that's going around like wildfire. By listening, by keeping your ears open, guess what happens? You might get a different perspective. You also may get your perspective solidified, and maybe you say, you know what? I'm going to keep with the way I believe because I feel that my way is the right way, and I'm going to continue down my path. But you have choices. So you notice how everything keeps coming back to sort of the same things. Choices is one. Being careful of your choices, being careful of your words. All of these things are so important in our life's trajectory. And, not taking things personally is huge. When I started doing that and I started saying, oh, they're showing me who they are. How lucky for me that they're doing that. How great that now I'm aware and I can make my choices and my actions based on what I've been shown, what I've heard, what I've seen. But it's not about me. It's about them. And so what do I mean by that? Well, if somebody's trying to hurt you verbally, emotionally, mentally, the choice you can make is, I'm going to step out of this relationship. Now, you can step out of it temporarily until things calm down, and maybe you can have a conversation and things can go down a different path. Or it might be more permanent. There are a lot of stubborn people out there that think it's their way or the highway. And the reality of it is it's not. Their way is not the only way. Your way is not the only way. That's why bringing in flexibility and openness to what you hear, excuse me, is so very, very vital to your trajectory, to your growth. And so what else? I'm trying to think of where else I'm going to go with this. I'm getting close to the end of the podcast. And as I ask my guests normally, what do I have to say to my listeners that I may not have said, or I want to reiterate what I'm saying? As a self-love expert, I come on and I share these with you because all of these pieces, it's like a jigsaw puzzle of life. All of these pieces sort of fit into this jigsaw puzzle. And when you get them in, cleanly without bending the edges or whatever, then you live that life that you are so divinely meant to live. It's my passion to help people learn to love themselves. And so my process with learning to love themselves is about releasing the repressed emotions and energies, forgiving themselves and others, learning to accept yourself. As I like to say, I like to say this, warts, wrinkles, and all, which all bring you to that pinnacle point of love, self-love, and love for others. Reminding you to bring in that gratitude practice to help you have more love for yourself and others, which just expand everything. And you'll bring more people. You will be a magnet for more people coming to you. You know, if you're looking for a romantic relationship, this happened for me. By doing the work that I did, I brought in self-love. I brought in my current partner, my husband, of, God, September will be 12 years. And I adore this individual. And we are so well balanced. And this is what I had been hoping and praying for. Everything happens the way it's supposed to. Know this. And if you're in a situation, you're in it not to stay stuck in it. You're in it so that you can move through it and then get on the other side. It's like if you're seeing one side is shadowy and one side is bright, you get from the shadow to the bright. And that's what it's all about. So please check out my book, My Effing Long Journey to Loving Myself, A Guide to a Shorter Path, on Amazon. And not only hear my story and how I got through it, but there are so many powerful techniques and tips in this book that will help you get on your way. Also, check out my website at Marla Goldberrg. Goldberg has 2 R's.com. See what I do, how I can work with you, how I want to be of service to all who I come in contact with, because it's about helping you achieve the same thing I've achieved. Not the same exact steps, but in your own beautiful, bright, loving way. Okay, well, I only have a few minutes left on the show, so I want to thank Bridget for all she does for me. I'd like to thank myself for showing up. I'm teasing. I want to thank Bridget for all she does for me. She's my right hand, my left hand. So grateful for all she does to help me, not only with my getting this podcast up and running, but to also be helpful in so many other ways within the scope of my business and all I do within it. I want to thank you, the listening audience, for taking time out of your day, out of your life, for being a part of this show. As I mention constantly, excuse me, I mention it a lot, that I have created the show for you, to bring you topics to help you, bring in tips, tricks, and techniques. I call them the 3 T's, so you can bring those into your life so that they can help you in your trajectory. I'm grateful for you being here so I can share with bring in these guests who have these amazing abilities and talents, and they use them to be of service to help their clients and all they come in contact with. And we do this out of love for you and to be of service to you. So thank you so much. Next week's guest I will be announcing next Thursday morning. I'm going to keep it as a little bit of a surprise, so I'm so grateful. And as I leave you, as always, I send you love, blessings, and gratitude. Know how grateful I am that you're in my life in whatever capacity you're in it. For not only are you my student, you're my teacher. Not only am I a teacher, I am your student. And I'm so grateful for you. And as I leave, I say those 3, no, they're not little words, they're 3 big words. I love you. Not only do I love you, not only do your family and friends love you, or your colleagues, neighbors, whomever, but you have a plethora of beings on the other side of the veil who are your biggest cheerleaders. They really love you because they're in a world of love over there. And they want to conspire on your behalf. Here's the secret. They don't have free will. So ask for what you need, want, desire in your life, and allow them the space and grace to then go get it for you. Be open to how the information comes to you, because it may not be linear. So be mindful and open to how it comes to you. And if it doesn't come immediately, know that there's something you might need to work on so that they can then bring you what it is you need, want, desired. Okay, I will see you next week. Have the most incredible week. Prayers again to all those who are challenged with the weather and their situations and those in the submarine. And I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye for now.